the start of a week. It's Monday. We got a huge week of earnings in front of us. We're really excited about it. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take for Market Rebellion. Now, looking back to last week, there was so much chatter. Everybody wanted to talk about the NASDAQ. Oh my goodness, the big names are all giving it back. First of all, let's not jump to too much too fast. There was some pullbacks, no doubt about it, in the NASDAQ. As a matter of fact, when you look at last Friday, you look at the NASDAQ, it was down significantly. It down to 10,240, somewhere in that range, and actually did rally back to finish down just 100 points. Still a pretty significant move to the downside for the NASDAQ, down about 1%. And then you look over at the Dow, it was moving around significantly. It started off the day down about 160 points, kind of rallied off of that, moved around a little bit, finished the day down about 180. I don't know that that was cause for huge concern. Now, yes, there was some pressure on some of the NASDAQ stocks, no doubt about it. There has been some pressure over the last, call it a little over a week or so. But let's not jump to too many conclusions too quickly. We know about this sprint to the upside. We know about how the NASDAQ and so many of those names in the NASDAQ and the technology space, as well as in the biotech space, have been on that sprint to the upside and supporting this massive move in the overall broad market with a lot of specific names, but also a little bit of a broader swipe in terms of that move to the upside. So all that being said, let's not jump to too many conclusions would be what I would say. And I've already heard people say, well, this week with earnings, there's the possibility that maybe we start to bounce. Bounce off of what? We've barely pulled back. So let's not put too much in front of this. Yes, the NASDAQ's had some pressure on it. And yes, we can all understand and see some of those pressures because of the swift move that we have seen. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's over yet. And I think we have to have a little bit more details. And this week, that's what we're going to be getting, because we are going to have so much in terms of the S&P 500 and the earnings cycle. This week is a monster report. So all that being said, where was the VIX? Well, the VIX did get up towards that 28.5 level, and we found ourselves right back in this range that we were talking about last week. And now the range looks to be, let's call it 24.5 on the low end and maybe 28.5, maybe 29 on the upper end. So we've been using about a 5-point band, and that's about right, because that's exactly what we have been seeing. And we're seeing far more frequent 1% moves than we are 2% moves in the marketplace. So makes sense that we are adjusting back steadily, slowly. There's still a lot of questions out there, and those questions absolutely do give you some understanding of why there's a little bit extra premium right now, continues to be in that volatility index. Now, gold over 1900. That's been huge. That's been something that hasn't been talked about nearly enough. Now it's getting talked about more and more. How about oil? Still holding on to these 41s. That's been pretty impressive. Silver, this huge run. You go back to May. I was taking a quick look. You go back to May and look where the SLV was and look at some of the option paper, which has been bullish, 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 and bullish. And we've been talking about this for a while now in terms of GLD. We talked about with the SLV, and obviously there are all kinds of different miners in different categories as well that we've been talking about in the material space. So on the NASDAQ, because of that huge move to the downside, where was the real negative pull coming from? Intel. Absolutely. That was the leader, because Intel, with its stumble, with its call for delays in terms of that nano chip and all the rest of what was going on there, that was a poor report. The overall report had some positives, no doubt about it, but they've got to compete. And because they weren't competing, Intel was going down. But on the contra of that, you were watching AMD and Taiwan Semi going to the upside. So the pulls were Intel. It was dragging down Western Dig. It also KLAC 10 Core. And then there was other names out there, Micron, Applied Materials, ASML, and then Tesla. Those names were pulling. But contra to that, we also saw names like AMD, as I mentioned, Taiwan Semiconductor, I mentioned. Those names were actually pulling things in the opposite direction. So a push and pull definitely going on. Towards the end of the day, pulled back up. And like we say, we only finished down about 1%. We were down significantly further than that early on. Biotech, we talk about the broadness. When everybody wants to say there's 5 stocks, and each and every day and each and every week, I will continue to point this out because it's not being talked about enough. And I think it's really, really important. So biotech, IBB, that was down about 2%. The XBI, down a little over 2%. And then you look over at the semiconductors, obviously because of the leadership from Intel, but that was down about 1%. Now, huge volumes. And I put this up on social media once in a while, and it's not intended to do anything other than just give you an idea of volumes. So I'm not saying whether it's bullish or bearish. I'm just showing you sheer volumes when I put up this stuff on social media, specifically on Twitter. It's just incredible to me because we are seeing volumes that used to be the entire trading floor volume. So I'll give you an example. When I started off in the industry, I think we were trading, call it 1 and 2 million contracts a day. Well, AMD on Friday traded 1.4 million contracts. Apple, 1.1 million contracts. Intel, 920,000 contracts. Tesla, 750,000 contracts. Now, I talk about that. I bring up Tesla because I brought that up last week on the halftime report with Scott and the gang. And I was just talking about volumes are huge. And there are certain names where we just see incredible volumes, and Tesla, one of those names, because I don't think that everybody understands just how much option paper, derivatives paper is being traded there. It's just extraordinary. So those were the top 4 last week on Friday, and that was something really special. Now, there are certain names that just seem to stand out and continue to push to the upside. We've watched, and oftentimes you hear about Raytheon. I bring up Raytheon fairly frequently. There are other names. Lockheed Martin last week actually was a leadership in terms of pulling that whole area up. But Kratos is a name that does not come up nearly enough because this is a name the defense and security world had a huge move on, I think, Friday. It was about a 9, maybe even 11% move, depending on where it closed on Friday. But there was unusual option activity in there on Wednesday and Thursday, and this is a name that really does move in violent moves, and oftentimes those moves we see them coming to the upside. Now, I mentioned gold and trading 1900. What kind of option paper were we seeing? Where was the derivatives world there? Well, GDXJ, huge paper. AUY, huge paper. GLD, SLV, also huge paper. I understand SLVs being silver, but talking about the metal space specifically and how much option paper we were seeing there. So early on, tech and materials definitely leading to the upside today. And that's continuing to see that right now, right in front of me. So gold, add another 30 points or so because gold trading about 1930. Now, if you take a look at GLD, this is how far back we've been specifically talking about the option paper being incredibly bullish. So if you go back to May and fairly late into May, GLD trading around 161 at the time. We had buyers of 12,000 of the July 163 calls. Presently, the GLD is now trading at 182, just to give you some perspective. Also, SLV. This is how long we have been seeing this unusual option activity in SLV, which has been bullish, 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 bullish. But so here it is right now. Now, silver right around 24.30. Now, SLV trades a little bit differently. It's not. So, began in May, 18,500 of the August 16 calls were bought. The SLV at the time was trading 16. It's trading now a little over 22. It just gives you an idea of this is not a new story, even though it seems like everybody suddenly says gold, silver. This is a story that has been going on now since, let's call it early May, into May, and then June, July. It's been absolutely an incredible move, but it's not just a sudden move. This has been something that has been playing out now for a while. So I think it's a really, really important part of that is to point out that that has been trading for a while. So today, what are we seeing? Well, big cap tech is your leader. What does that mean? Apple. We got a huge earnings slate in front of us this week. Intel, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Tesla. Those are your leadership names today. Those are your big cap leadership names. Add into that some biotech. And by the way, a double upgrade today for Biogen. That was up over about 3%. You look over at the XBI and the IBB, both up significantly today. So Morgan Stanley with a double upgrade on Biogen, certainly not hurting things at all for Biogen and the biotech industry in itself. So opening today, we had a very flat opening for the Dow. We'd been up about 80 points or more in the pre-markets. By the time we got to the opening, early stages, we were about flat, call it. And the NASDAQ was up about 80 points. Well, very rapidly. Right now, we are about 40 minutes into the trading session. The SMH absolutely flying to the upside. So the Semiconductor Index, one of the major names that are really powering it right now, you got Xilinx, KLAC, Applied Materials, Texas Instruments, Lam Research, NVIDIA, throw in ASML. Some of these names are obviously on that pulling to the downside just last week when Intel was dragging everything down. Well, the SMH with a nice 3% move to the upside. Now, I talk about these Chinese names all the time and all the paper back and forth, and I've basically decided that I'm only trading in the options world of these names just because it doesn't seem like there's enough being done behind the scenes in terms of investigating what these companies are up to and the actual numbers, all the rest of that. All that being said, we see option paper in here all the time. As a matter of fact, Friday in Sogu. So SOGO is the symbol there. Now, this is a really interesting one. Stock is trading about 570. They bought 17,000 August 7.5 calls, trading, call it, give or take, in the ballpark of 20 cents. Today, talk about 10 cent, maybe taking a bid on them. Stock's trading well over $8. Those options flying to the upside, up about $1. Unusual option activity. We're always sniffing around. We're always looking around, trying to find it. And with a 20-cent option, it gives you a risk reward. At least you know exactly what you're risking for your potential reward. And boy, that's a big reward in a very short period of time. So now as we get a little deeper into the day, I'm looking at the Dow right now, a real quick refresh. It's up about 120 points. Matter of fact, the S&P is up about 17, NASDAQ up about 100 plus points. So nice move to the upside. What's sort of part of the move that we're seeing? Well, suddenly the industrial started to catch on a little bit. Financials not participating in this one. Really disappointing to look over at the XLF and see that lack of participation. But you got Dow, you got Caterpillar, you got 3M, those kind of names, definitely power into the upside. Now, I've talked about gold a lot. I've talked about metals a lot. I'm going to give you one last thing on gold. So gold right now, when I look over at Newmont Mining, one of the biggies, that's where the unusual option activity really stood out. And that was one of the first options to hit today on the unusual option activity. So NEM is the symbol there, trading around 69.30. Got a buyer of about 4,400 October, so getting some time. We don't get time like that. October 80 calls, trading for about $2. Now, earnings are coming out this week, so this is obviously not as concerning about earnings, or they would have bought July. But instead of doing so, they're going all the way out to October. So this is a longer-term view. Again, talking about all that bullish paper in GLD, the bullish paper in the miners as well. We had GDXJ as well, the junior miners just last week. Huge option paper. This one's not gigantic, but it's still fairly large. Seeing 4,000 of these October 80 calls, really interesting to see this. And so this just kind of continues that what we've been seeing, which has been bullish, and this isn't new. This has been going on for quite a while, where we've seen this nice, strong, powerful move. And you can go back and check and look to late May specifically to see when some of these moves have really started to explode to the upside. You'll see it in the SLV. You'll see it in the GLD as well. So folks, have a great day of trading. I hope you had a great weekend. We're going to have a great week in front of us. I'm really excited about it. Not on the halftime show today. Got a lot of radio things going on. We also, hey, join our roundtable today. It's going to be great. Good friend, football guy. We got Jeff Kilberg joining us. Jeff's a great guy from the trading floors. At one time, he actually clerked for me. Jeff was a great guy. He rose up and did far bigger things than anything, but he did it the right way. Started at the bottom, learned the fundamentals, and then moved all the way up to the top. Big man over at the board of trade for a long period of time. Jeff's a great guy with a lot of great insight. You see him a lot on CNBC, particularly on some of these little deals where they'll bring in Brian Sullivan or something like that, or occasionally he's on Brian Sullivan's show as well. But he's going to be a lot of fun. Played for Lou Holtz at Notre Dame, so he and I share that. I played for Lou Holtz back at the University of Minnesota. He played at Notre Dame. He won a national title. I did not. If Lou would have stayed at Minnesota, maybe we would have had that national title. But in any case, Jeff's a great guy, and tune into that today. It's going to be outstanding. 3 o'clock Central Time, 4 o'clock Eastern Time on the Market Rebellion Roundtable. Folks, have a great day of trading. Education, get it. Knowledge is king. Giddy up.